If you served in the military, or your spouse did, and you think GI Bill benefits are just for 20-somethings fresh out of the service, I want you to stick around for the next few minutes, because that assumption could be costing your family real money. The Department of Veterans Affairs just rolled out new post-9/11 GI Bill payment rates for the 2026 through 2027 school year, and these numbers affect a lot more people than you'd expect, including retirees who served decades ago, spouses of veterans, and grandparents who assume they can just hand this benefit down to a grandchild. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what changed, who's actually eligible to use or transfer this money right now, and one mistake I see older veterans and their families make constantly that ends up locking them out of thousands of dollars they were entitled to. Before we get into the details, make sure you subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. As of August 1st, 2026, the maximum the VA will pay for tuition and fees at a private or foreign school jumped to $30,908.34 for the academic year. That's a 3.3% increase, and it's not arbitrary. By law, this rate is tied to the average cost of undergraduate tuition nationwide, so it moves every year with the market. If you're at a public in-state school and you qualify for the full 100% benefit level, the VA covers the entire net cost of in-state tuition and mandatory fees, no cap at all. That's a detail a lot of people miss. They hear GI Bill and assume there's always a dollar limit, but at a public school with full eligibility, there isn't one. Now here's where it gets personal for a lot of you watching. This benefit doesn't just belong to the veteran who earned it, it can belong to a spouse, and in certain cases, to children. If you're a retired veteran with a service-connected disability rating, or if your spouse passed away due to a condition connected to their service, there are separate VA education programs. The Fry Scholarship and Dependents Educational Assistance, built specifically for surviving spouses and children in those situations. These are different from the post-9/11 GI Bill and have their own rules and rates, so if that description sounds like your family, it's worth a direct call to the VA to see what you actually qualify for, because a lot of eligible spouses simply never apply. Let's talk housing, because this is where the real money often lives, especially if you or a family member is considering going back to school later in life. For students attending classes in person here in the U.S., the VA bases your monthly housing allowance on the military's basic allowance for housing rate for an E5 with dependents, calculated by the zip code of the school I. And for this new 2026 to 2027 cycle, they're using the updated 2026 BAH figures. That means the payment can swing significantly depending on where the school is located. A school in a high cost of living city is going to generate a much bigger housing check than the same program in a rural area. If you're helping a grandchild or family member pick a school and cost is a factor, that zip code detail is worth researching before you commit. For anyone doing coursework entirely online, the rules are different, and it catches people off guard. The maximum monthly housing allowance for online-only students is now $1,261. That's roughly half the in-person national average. If you're taking even just one class in person alongside your online coursework, you may actually qualify for the higher location-based housing rate instead of the flat online rate. So before you or a family member assumes online means the lower payment period, it's worth checking your specific enrollment setup, because mixing in one in-person class could mean hundreds of extra dollars a month. Quick pause here. If you're finding this breakdown useful, hit that like button and consider subscribing, because I'm going to walk through the eligibility tiers next. And there's a common misunderstanding about who actually qualifies for the full 100% rate that I think a lot of veterans and their families have wrong. So who gets the full 100%? The VA pays this benefit on a sliding scale based on your active duty time, and you land at the top tier if any of three things are true. You served at least 1,095 days, which is roughly 36 months, on active duty. You received a Purple Heart on or after September 11th, 2001. Or you served at least 30 continuous days and were discharged specifically because of a service-connected disability. If none of those apply, you're on a percentage scale below that. And every dollar figure we've talked about today, tuition, housing, books gets multiplied by your personal percentage. One thing worth flagging for anyone who's been out of the loop for a while, there used to be a 40% eligibility tier, but that was eliminated back in 2018 under the Forever GY bill. If you're working off old paperwork or an old conversation with a buddy from years ago that mentions a 40% rate, that information is outdated. The lowest tier today is 50%. Before we get into the details, make sure you subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Books and supplies get their own separate payment, and while it's smaller than tuition or housing, it adds up. The VA pays $41.67 per credit hour, up to 24 credits a year, capping out at $1,000 annually at the 100% level. It's paid out at the start of each term based on how many credits you're carrying, and just like everything else, it scales down with your eligibility percentage if you're not at the full 100% tier. Now, if flight training, licensing exams, or correspondence courses are part of the picture for your family, those each have their own separate rules under this update. Flight school students saw their annual maximum climb to $17,661.89. For professional licensing and certification tests, things like a real estate license, a contractor's license, or similar credentials, the VA will reimburse up to $2,000 per test. And for certain national testing programs, there's actually no maximum cap on reimbursement at all. Correspondence courses are reimbursed at actual net cost, up to $15,012.59 for the year. These are smaller, more specific benefits. But if you're a retiree thinking about a career pivot or a certification rather than a full degree program, this is often the fastest, cheapest way to use GI Bill money. Here's something worth understanding about how your benefit gets spent behind the scenes. The VA charges your entitlement, meaning the months of benefit you have left, based on a formula tied to dollars used. For this cycle, you're charged 1 month of entitlement for every $2,578.64 spent. That number matters if you're trying to stretch a benefit across multiple family members or multiple programs, because it tells you how fast you're burning through your total months of eligibility, not just how much money is going out the door. A lot of retirees assume that because they earned this benefit, they can transfer it to whoever they want, whenever they want, including a grandchild. That is not how it works. Transferring post 9/11s. GI Bill benefits to a spouse or dependent child generally has to be requested while the service member is still on active duty and meets certain service commitment requirements at the time of transfer. Once you're fully retired and out of the service, that transfer window has typically already closed. Grandchildren are not eligible recipients under this program at all, no matter how the benefit gets structured. If you're a veteran who's already separated and you never initiated a transfer while you were still in uniform, your options for passing this specific benefit to family members are limited. And it's important to know that now, rather than assuming you can sort it out later. This is exactly the kind of detail that's worth confirming directly with the VA or a veteran service officer, because eligibility rules can have nuances specific to your exact service dates and circumstances. Before we get into the details, make sure you subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. One more thing worth knowing if you're a veteran who served years ago and assumed your GI Bill benefits simply expired. For many veterans who left active duty on or after January 1st, 2013, post 9/11, GI Bill benefits generally don't come with the old expiration clock that used to apply. That's different from the older Montgomery GI Bill, which does typically run on a use it or lose it timeline. So if you separated more recently and never use your education benefit because life got in the way, it may still be sitting there waiting for you. It's worth checking your actual status on va.gov rather than assuming the door is closed. The big picture for 2026 through 2027. Tuition caps went up 3.3%. Housing allowances are now calculated using updated 2026 BAH rates, and the books, flight training, and testing benefits all adjusted with them. If there's one takeaway I want you to walk away with today, it's this. Don't assume you know your eligibility status or your family's transfer options based on what was true 5, 10, or 20 years ago. The rules have changed more than once, tiers have been eliminated, expiration timelines have shifted, and transfer windows are tighter than most people realize. The one action I genuinely encourage you to take today is simple. Log into your account on va.gov or call the VA directly and confirm your actual remaining entitlement and your family's transfer eligibility in writing. Don't rely on memory or old conversations. Whether this benefit is for you, your spouse, or a child who's getting ready for school, a 5-minute confirmation now could save your family a very frustrating surprise later. Thanks for spending this time with me today. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.